It looks like we have a quorum. Stephen, are we ready to get started?
I believe we are. Larry, are you all
Yeah.
good to go on technical side?
We are set to go.
I'm on mute. I've been talking this whole time. Good afternoon. Welcome to the special session for the City Planning Commission meeting. The first order of business, I'll do a roll call. Commissioner Alexander.
Present.
Commissioner Brown.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Flick, present. Commissioner Lunn.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Stieg.
Here.
Commissioner Stewart.
Present.
Commissioner Witchery. I don't think she's there on the call. Commissioner Mobley. I think she's dead on the call. And Commissioner Weidberg. I don't think he's on the call yet either. So the first order will be to approve the meeting minutes from the November 9th meeting. Looking for a motion for approval.
I'll move approval of the November 9th minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Stieg. Is there a second?
Brown will second.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Stieg has made a motion for approval of the November 9th meeting minutes, seconded by Commissioner Brown. If there are no comments, I'll call the question. Commissioner Alexander.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Flick, yes. Commissioner Lunn.
Yes.
Commissioner Stieg.
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart.
Yes.
Commissioner Witchery.
Yes, and Commissioner Witchery is present for the meeting.
Thank you. Okay. Meeting minutes are approved. Now we're going to do a reading of the special public hearing rules. The order of business at the hearing shall be as follows: call to order and roll call with recording of the members present, approval of minutes, reading of the hearing rules, presentation of dockets, with the staff presentation, the applicant presentation, and questions from members. Then there will be a recess for 30 minutes, followed by consideration of dockets, which includes the public comment, rebuttal by the applicant, questions from members, voting, and adjournment. The presentation of dockets. The order of business for each docket shall be as follows: presentation by the City Planning Commission staff, presentation by the applicant or their representative. The appellant or applicant may appear on their behalf or be represented by a duly authorized agent. Once the representative, only one representative may speak on behalf of the request and must pre-register with the staff of the City Planning Commission. Other representatives or speakers may sign up to provide comments during the public comment portion of the meeting. The applicant shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. The members have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff or the applicant. Then there'll be a recess. The commission shall take a 30-minute recess to allow members of the public to comment. Public comment rules: only written public comment will be allowed. Live public comment will not be allowed. No member of the public may submit more than one written comment per agenda item. The public comment form will be made available at the start of the meeting and will close at the end of the 30-minute recess. Public comments must be submitted electronically on the form provided by the City Planning Commission. Any comment missing this information will not be read aloud. Each submission must contain the commenter's first and last name, the commenter's address, whether the commenter is being paid in connection with his or her comments, and the agenda item. A moderator will read into the record all comments pertaining to that item that have been submitted in accordance with these rules. Comments will be read aloud in a normal speaking voice. The moderator will discontinue reading a comment once it exceeds 2 minutes. Following the public comment period, if there is opposition, the authorized representative of the application is allowed a rebuttal not to exceed 2 minutes. Following the public comment and rebuttal, the members have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff or the applicant. Voting when making a motion, the member making a motion shall clearly state their name when making a motion. For example, I, Commissioner Flick, move to approve, deny the request. The member seconding the motion shall clearly state their name when seconding the motion. For example, I, Commissioner Flick, second the motion made by Commissioner Flick. The chair will restate the motion, confirming who made and who seconded the motion. Then the chair will request a verbal vote from each member of our roll call. Each member will indicate yay to vote in support of the motion or nay to vote in opposition. And now on to the presentation of dockets, and we'll start with zoning docket 9621.
Zoning docket 9621 is a request by City Council motion number NM-21-312. The request is a text amendment to Article 10 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to classify wine shop as a conditional use in the HMC2 Historic Marigny Treme Bywater Commercial District. The proposed text amendment would affect properties within all HMC2 districts. Currently, a wine shop that allows on-site tastings or conditional uses within the Historic Urban Mixed Use District, the HUB1 Historic Urban Neighborhood Business District, and the AC3 Arts and Culture District Overlay District, Diversity Overlay District, in addition to being conditional uses in underlying districts that allow for both a bar and a retail sale of packaged alcoholic beverages. So the staff agrees that this overly burdensome nature of requiring 2 permits for 1 use can be rectified by adding wine shops to more base zoning districts. So wine shops would only be allowed as a conditional use, and through provisos and use standards, the use could have restricted hours of operation and under conditions that would differentiate the use from that of a bar. The proposal is also consistent with the master plan. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of zoning docket 9621.
Thank you. Is there an applicant or an applicant's representative on the call?
This is a city council motion, so I don't think we
Oh,
have
sorry. Are there any questions of the commission for staff? Okay, hearing none, we'll go on to the next docket item, zoning docket 9721.
Thank you. Zoning docket 09721 is a request for a zoning change from an SRS suburban single-family residential district to an SRM1 suburban multifamily residential district. The subject property is located on 1 lot of record with frontage on Madrid Street in the Millenburg neighborhood. The site was previously 2 lots of record, Lot 9 and Lot 10, prior to being subdivided in 2016 to create 1 lot of record, existing Lot 9A. Former Lot 9 is currently developed with a 2-family residential structure, and former Lot 10 is currently vacant. Lot 9A is approximately 9,584 square feet in total area. The applicant proposes to develop the vacant side of the lot with a multifamily residential dwelling. Multifamily residential developments are neither permitted nor conditional uses within the current SRS suburban single-family residential district. Further, the SRS district does not permit multiple structures on 1 lot of record. To develop the site as a multifamily residence, the applicant proposes to rezone the subject property from SRS suburban single-family residential district to SRM1 multifamily residential. The SRM1 district also allows for higher density of residential uses. The rezoning of the property to SRM1 suburban multifamily residential district or any other district would be considered a spot zone and would have to meet the standards set forth by the Commission's historic non-conforming use policy. The historic non-conforming use policy requires the petition site to be consistent with the master plan. The proposed zoning change is inconsistent with the master plan. Therefore, the staff is not supportive of the zoning change from the SRM1 suburban multifamily residential district, or the SRM1 district.
Thank you. Is there an applicant or an applicant's representative on the call?
Hi, yes. My name is Jennifer Canatello. I'm the owner.
Jennifer, can you just state your address and you'll have 2 minutes.
So the address of the property or my current address?
Your current address.
2710 Dublin Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70118.
Thank you.
So I'm requesting for a zoning change, just because I would like to make the lot back to its original state. So it was originally a multifamily property. As you can see, there are multifamily properties all around the neighborhood. So I would just like to turn it back to its original state. I heard you guys state that more than one property cannot be on one lot. So I would be willing to subdivide this property in order for it to be its own entity as well. My goal is to gear towards affordable housing for the elderly. And I do own the property next door, which is on the same lot, and it will be maintained in that same manner.
Great, thank you. Staff, what would be required for the applicant to go through the process of subdividing the lot in order to, or would she have to make a separate application? How would that work?
So as far as subdividing that lot, the lot 9A as it is not large enough to be subdivided to allow any development on the property on that side. So that's why I didn't recommend that in the report, because it's the bulk and yard, the bulk of the size of the lot is too small, basically.
And does she have any other options here?
Just to leave it undeveloped. The only option for development would be to rezone.
Are there any questions of the applicant
Yes, I do.
or of staff? Oh, sorry, Ms. Cantala, go ahead.
So my question is, I'm curious as to how the lot is not large enough to subdivide when there was a structure on it previously.
So it was before the current zoning ordinance went into effect that there was the lot was developed with a 2-family residence, but that was under the old zoning ordinance and not the current zoning ordinance. So the current zoning ordinance would require, and I don't know the exact frontage, but I believe is it 30 feet in that district, or is it 60 feet in that district, Stephen?
Yeah, Valerie, you're correct. It's 50 feet. And I think just to take a step back a little bit, this is kind of similar to an application we saw a few weeks ago where you've got a portion of Gentilly that historically had a lot of doubles. And you see in the picture, there's a double on either side of this. And when the zoning ordinance when the master plan was done in 2010, the master plan gave this property and much of the surrounding area a single family residential designation. And then that was translated into single family zoning when the new zoning ordinance was adopted in 2015, and correspondingly large lot sizes. And so there's a disconnect here between the fact that you've got, generally narrower lots, less than 50 feet wide lots typically, that often have doubles, and then a set of zoning regulations that only allow singles and require larger lot sizes. So there's really this tension there between what exists in the area and what the zoning regulations are currently that really steer the neighborhood towards much lower density development than it's had historically. Mm-hmm. So that's a bit of a tangent, but it's an effort to explain the kind of inconsistencies you see here between what's existed in the past and what the zoning is saying now.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Are there any other questions, or are there any questions from the commission for staff or the applicant?
I do have one more question.
I'm sorry, Ms. Cantala. Go ahead, but this will be the last one.
So my last question is, if I subdivide it and sell it, would someone else be able to build on it, or there is no building on it?
No, there would be no building. There would be no building on it because it's not large enough even for a single family development if it were subdivided.
This is Commissioner Witry. What is the current Lot size, could you remind me, please?
The lot size, I believe it's 9,584 square feet total. 9,584 square feet.
And so what does that break down in terms of the frontage?
I would have
Looks like
to look at the survey.
Valerie, I have it here.
88 feet.
Yeah, so the property is 88 feet. Each of the two new lots, should it be subdivided, would have to be 50 feet each. So it's basically, it's wider than your average lot, but not quite
Right.
wide enough to become two lots. There is a mechanism for waivers of that to be granted through the Board of Zoning Adjustments. I don't know whether the board would approve the request or not. So, that's a decision it would have to make. But that would really be the only avenue for redeveloping the undeveloped portion of this site should the zoning change not be approved.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the commission?
Hi, Commissioner Lon. I have a question for Stephen or staff. If you could help about this. So the recent legislation that allows for if you can show historical evidence of a building having like, say if it's in RD2 in a historic urban neighborhood, HURD2, and you had evidence of the building historically being used as a triplex or a fourplex, then you could revert to that usage and have it be multifamily despite the underlying zoning. Would it even be possible to apply that same thinking to a lot that was formerly had a building on it that was multifamily, even if there has been rezoned single family? I mean, I'm asking partly because this seems to be in conflict totally with what we're trying to do within the city to increase housing opportunities, especially more affordable housing opportunities. So I understand these changes were made in 2015 to single family. I'm not sure what they were thinking when they did this, but trying to find ways to make what we, like what we did with the buildings that have evidence of having increased units and allowing that to be an exception to the underlying zoning, if that might be proposed to be allowed for lots that had building that were also had increased density over what the underlying current zoning is.
Yeah, that's a good question. So there is not currently a regulation. The regulation you're referencing exists in other parts of the city, notably the historic core districts. It does not apply in this district, which is a suburban district. The concept that you're getting at of providing an avenue to replace housing that historically existed is something that, and Paul can speak to this, but it's something that's been contemplated as part of the broader housing study, but it's just not something that exists in the regulations, certainly at this point in time. So your comment's well taken. It's just not a path that exists right now. Really, the only option is to rezone, and there's a master plan issue with that that's identified in the staff report, or to not rezone and thus the applicant would be stuck with what they've got, or would have to pursue a rezoning to carve this into, or would have to pursue a subdivision to, divide this into two lots. And that would, of course, require variances as part of that process.
Okay, but a pathway to do it is being considered in the housing study without zoning change, without needing the waiver, without a complete area zoning change.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say, and Paul or Bob or Rachel could interrupt me, is that the housing study is really looking at many, many different approaches to increase density and lower housing costs. That's one of them. I don't know, if that concept is sort of fully developed at this point, or if there's a mechanism being contemplated. So I don't want to imply that that's coming down the pipe very shortly, but it is kind of part of the universe of things that the housing study is looking at.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen.
My
Thank you, Commissioner
question
Lund.
sort of is a follow-up to Kathleen's. When are we due for master plan amendments? if there are any to come out of the housing study to align more with where we are. And I'm not sure, I don't remember the thinking on this area in particular. You know, it was a while ago that the master plan, occasionally there have been, you know, places that had needed to be re-examined that kind of fell into, you know, a place where we hadn't intended them to be for zoning purposes. And this might seem to be one of those that would be, especially given the housing study, might be, that might inform where we go with that with the master plan. Is there any thought on that?
So I can answer part of your question. As far as the master plan revision process, we've always anticipated that sometime in the next coming year, we would, once we get our staff rebuilt and we have the capacity to take on larger things, we'll not only complete the housing opportunity study, but initiate a master plan revision process. And so the study, I can pretty confidently say, will be addressing this issue. Of course, the timing is not perfect for this particular application. But as far as the master plan, you know, we're that's a conversation we can have at our in our ops meeting, as far as what that looks like from a time frame. So any master plan issues that need to be addressed, that's something you all can certainly consider.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
this is Commissioner Witchery. What do we do in the meantime as a tool for CPC for these applications that are caught in between the master plan revisions?
So if that's directed at me, I would say it's to do what you've always done in the past, and, you know, take each application on its merits. And if you feel that it merits a departure from the staff recommendation, then certainly that's within your authority to do that. You know, we have always, as staff, taken a very conservative approach. We don't think it's a staff role to disregard the regulations as they're written. So, you know, that's certainly something that the commission has done in the past, and you know, is in those circumstances where the commission feels that it is, you know, in furtherance of the health, safety, and welfare of the city.
Thank you.
Important language.
Great. Are there any other questions or comments for staff or the applicant? Okay, hearing none, we'll go on to zoning docket 9821.
Zoning docket 9821 is a request which would rezone an almost 36 acres vacant property located at the corner of Chef Monter Highway and I-510 from a BIP, Business Industrial Park District, to an SRS Single Family Residential District in order to build single family homes. This BIP district, all of which is vacant, generally encompasses most of the properties bounded by Chef Monter Highway, Bullard Avenue, Dwyer Road, and I-510. The BIP Business Industrial Park District is intended to provide appropriate locations for certain types of business and light industrial facilities in well-designed and landscaped campus environment and provide employment opportunities near residential areas. Typical development in the district would be that which is commonly known as an office and industrial park. The zoning change would be a downzoning, as the SRS district is a low-density residential zoning that allows a much more restricted range of low-intensity residential use in contrast to the larger scale office, commercial, and industrial uses allowed in the BIP district. Thus, in terms of land use impact, the zoning change would reduce the potential intensity of any future use and development of the land. However, the use of the site for business and industrial purposes, not residential purposes, is what is intended for this property by the master plan, which designated for business center, future land use, due to its location adjacent to Interstate 510 and Chef Motor Highway. Thus, the zoning change, while not impactful in and out of itself, would undermine the master plan's broader effort to provide locations for large-scale commercial and industrial development in areas that are well suited for such development. For that reason, the staff cannot support the request and recommends denial of ZB 09821.
Thank you. Is there an applicant or an applicant's representative on the call?
Yes, I'm the applicant's representative. I'm Alex Modinger, their architect. My address,
Can you just, thank you. Go ahead.
my address is 1558 Annunciation, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70130.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My client brought this potential project to me, and I did some initial research, as I always do, by discussing this matter with staff. And staff has been very helpful through this process. And we anticipated a recommendation of a denial because we knew going into this that we were going against the master plan. As was discussed with staff, we looked at the process and how we could rewrite the zoning for this area, and it required the backing of the City Council District E office. So we initially, before my contract was even signed with my client, we had some initial conversations with Victoria Lewandowski, and since that has fed through with Terry Guerin, and we've also met with the council person herself to discuss the matters. They established for us a baseline that we would need to meet to gain their support. And we have designed this neighborhood of about 110 lots to conform with the expectations of the neighborhoods and the neighborhoods around it. And we've gone through our NPP process to present that to them, as well as separate ENONAC meetings with the group neighborhood associations, just to answer more questions and more details. My clients made themselves very available. They've been working on matching lot and land prices, house prices, access issues, roadways, and the basic specs of the neighborhoods to make sure that we were in line with the expectations of the neighbors around us. That was the line that was presented to us to get through getting the support of the council person. We do expect to be denied. We've done some work to try and get through this process and extend this SRS district, which is essentially the best district in my assessment and my early study on the zoning as to what would be suitable for the lots that this client was trying to develop and what was adjacent. We're dealing with lots that are generally 7,000 to 9,000 square feet on average. Some of them exceed that based on locations, and we're also working some of our land for stormwater collection of water in 2 different types of systems, as well as the civil system that we have there. And we have some existing utilities already there. They are obviously very large and well-sized because the intention was business use before that.
If you can just wrap up, you're about at time.
Okay, I believe that's essentially everything that was pertinent and important. If you have any more questions about the lots, I can answer those.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for the applicant or for staff? No, hearing none. We'll move on to zoning docket 9921.
Zoning docket 9921 is a request by City Council Motion M21-276 to consider an amendment to ordinance number 28,300 MCS, which amended ordinance number 24,282 MCS, authorizing the conditional use of a prison and related uses to permit the renovation of the existing Orleans Parish Justice Center's Phase 2 building or other resources for housing of male and female inmates classified with acute and subacute mental health conditions, and for components related to a medical clinic, infirmary, laundry, administration, and visitation area. The applicant is proposing to renovate the existing Phase 2 building as an alternative to the construction of the Phase 3 building that was considered under zoning docket 7121. This renovation is expected to be far less costly than constructing a new building and would provide more efficiency since the OJC operations would be consolidated in one building. The proposed renovation would provide more total beds and more single cells than the proposed Phase 3 building. This proposal relies on the conditional use or the continued use of the University Medical Center for infirmary care and the continued outsourcing of laundry service, as opposed to both being in-house services as proposed with the Phase 3 building. The applicant is proposing to renovate portions of the second floor of the existing Phase 2 OJC building to accommodate cells for inmates with acute and subacute mental health conditions. As existing second floor pods 2A, 2C, and 2D would be renovated to provide a total of 117 beds with 45 single cells. 6 one-on-one and 3 group counseling rooms would also be provided. This proposed renovation can be approved by the Executive Director of the City Planning Commission under Article 4, Section 45F, changes to approved plans. Though the renovation of the second floor of the Phase 2 OJC building can be approved administratively, the current conditional use ordinance does not allow inmates with acute and subacute mental health conditions to be housed in this building and allow for the housing of inmates from the general population in any building other than the Phase 2 building. The staff has recommended several amendments to the existing provisos of this ordinance that would allow for the renovation of the second floor of the existing building and temporary housing of inmates in other OJC buildings within the complex. The City Planning Commission's role is narrowly focused on determining if there are meaningful land use impacts and whether there are building or site design changes or operational restrictions that can be imposed to mitigate those impacts in order to make the development appropriate for the intended location. From a land use perspective, the renovation of the Phase 2 building for inmates with acute and subacute mental health conditions is not expected to result in any new impacts or an intensification of the current use. With this in mind, the staff believes that the request meets the approval standards of Article 4, Section 43F, and recommends approval of the request. This application constitutes the second of 2 competing proposals for housing and services for inmates with acute and subacute mental health conditions. The other proposals, zoning docket 7121, consider the construction of a new 2-story, 80,500 square foot facility that would contain 89 beds. Zoning docket 7121 was heard by the City Planning Commission at their October 12th public hearing, and the commission's vote reached no legal majority and was transmitted to the City Council with no recommendation from the commission. Ultimately, the City Council must consider how each proposal aligns with its policy agenda. Lastly, it has come to the staff's attention that a reference on page 7 of the preliminary report is not correct. The section referencing the 2010 ordinance states that Phase 3 would be an 89-bed facility that is similar or the same as the one proposed under zoning docket 7121. The 89-bed facility actually did not come into existence until later, and the staff will correct the record prior to it being submitted to the City Council. The staff recommends approval of zoning docket 9921, subject to 1 waiver and 21 provisos.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments of the commission for staff?
Is there a representative here from the council or from the?
We do have William Snowden representing this application.
Okay. I guess my question, first of all, might be for staff. I haven't followed this. Our previous zoning docket 71, has that been advanced through the council, or are they still waiting on that, or that will expire before there is a determination on that?
That application has not been acted on by the City Council. I believe we might have just transmitted it to the City Council maybe a week or so ago.
Okay. I also, did that proposal rely on the University Medical Center's infirmary care as well?
No, so I believe both the infirmary care and the laundry would have been, were intended to be in-house services in the Phase 3 proposal under 7121.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Just to answer your question about the previous zoning docket 7121, the deadline for that for the City Council is January 3rd.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I have a question with regard to laundry services and even the use of an external infirmary. Those are not constitutionally guaranteed or required services within a jail. Is that correct? This is for Missy.
That's kind of out of my scope of expertise.
Okay.
I'd have to look that up.
Okay. Just, yeah.
If I may just chime in real quickly, currently my understanding is the laundry services are outsourced. As it relates to practices that we've seen in other jails around the country, when an incarcerated person requires the level of care and attention that's most properly addressed by an infirmary, most jail and institutions are transporting those individuals to a nearby hospital that has the more appropriate infirmary type of care that can be offered in that hospital setting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I wanted to say to staff, thank you for the report, because breaking down the chronology was so helpful. And it's very complex and over a 10-year or so period to follow what went on with all of the different negotiations and proposals here. And so the chronology was particularly helpful. And but it is clear that retrofitting the current building would both provide more beds, provide the group counseling and the meeting spaces, and cost $9 million versus $51 million, and require most likely fewer security guard, fewer personnel to manage, and have all of the jail facilities more within one building instead of extending it across other buildings. I mean, just it's a much more efficient approach from what I can read, what I understand. I guess that's more of a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lund. Are there any other comments? Or go ahead.
Oh, the greenest building is the one that's already built. I agree with you, Commissioner Lund.
Okay, there are no other comments or questions. We'll move on to zoning docket 121.
Zoning docket 121 is a request by City Council motion number M21-362 for a conditional use to permit a neighborhood commercial establishment in an HURD2 historic urban two-family residential district. The municipal address is 2043 Flood Street. The subject site is developed with a one-story, 1,240 square foot residential structure that has historically been used as a residence and more recently as a satellite location for a church under the previous owner, though there is no legal documentation to indicate the structure was used historically for non-residential purposes. The property owner intends to operate the structure as a specialty restaurant and internet cafe to provide free internet access to nearby residents and community members. This use falls within the neighborhood commercial establishment designation. Neighborhood commercial establishments are conditional uses in the HURD2 historic urban two-family residential district. The property owner's representative has indicated the site will undergo some minor renovations, such as enclosing the existing patio space to provide extra seating, removal of the chain link fence, and adding a wood fence and painting the exterior of the structure. The property was purchased by the current owner in November of 2015. The adjacent property located at 2036 Caffin Avenue is also owned by the property owner and is utilized as Burnell's Lower Ninth Ward Market. Patrons use the courtyard at the rear of the subject property between the two structures as the seating area. In 2015, the courtyard was paved over, bringing the site out of compliance with the minimum 30% permeable open space requirement for properties located in the HURD2 district. The applicant requested a waiver to maintain insufficient permeable open space on the lot as part of this conditional use request. However, the staff found the request did not meet the 9 criteria in Article 4, Section 4.6.f of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to grant the waiver, failing to meet 6 of the 9 approval standards. Due to the structure's original construction and historic use as a residence, The proposal also does not meet all of the use standards for neighborhood commercial establishments under Article 20, Section 20.3.NN of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. The neighborhood commercial establishment designation was created to allow for the future commercial use of structures in residential neighborhoods that were originally constructed and used for neighborhood serving commercial purposes, such as corner store type structures. The use standards reflect this orientation toward commercial structures. The existing structure is residential in its original design and is therefore not compliant with the use standards for neighborhood commercial establishments. Therefore, staff cannot support the request and recommends denial of zoning docket 121.
Thank you. Is there an applicant or an applicant's representative on the call?
I'm here. My name's Catherine Malucci at 2645 Toulouse Street.
Thank you, Catherine. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, I want to thank you for having me. My name is Katie Malucci and I work with local resilience and housing nonprofit SBP. And I'm here representing the property owner, Mr. Burnell Coltlin. Mr. Burnell would like to open an internet cafe on the lot directly behind his current business, Burnell's Lower Ninth Ward Market. After seeing children in his community struggle to find reliable internet during the pandemic, and even seeing a young girl completing schoolwork outside in the dark while using internet from his store, Mr. Burnell knew that there was a problem and he knew he could help. The property he has owned since 2015 would make a wonderful internet cafe, providing a safe place to complete homework, fill out job applications, and more. This cafe will be the only one of its kind in the neighborhood. Mr. Burnell and SBP have heard nothing but support for this project from city council members, all of Burnell's customers, even Lowe's and Drew Brees. Mr. Burnell has had a long history of commitment to the Lower Ninth Ward, its residents, and he is excited for this opportunity. Mr. Burnell is willing to comply with all provisions laid out in the staff report. He understands he may need to remove the art installation to comply with the needed permeable open space. Also, while there is concern in the report of a commercial property affecting residential neighborhoods, this lot has no neighbors. The adjacent lots are vacant, except for Burnell's Lower Ninth Ward Market. Approving this request is in line with the Commission's recent precedent. In 2019, a similar CUP was approved for a local nonprofit, Rethink, to convert a residential home into commercial space at 705 Flood Street. It's within a mile of this property. CPC and council approved this measure because of the significant community benefit the project would provide a traditionally underserved community. Consistent with CPC's former decision, Burnell's Internet Cafe would provide significant community benefit to the Lower Ninth Ward. If the Commission is not prepared to recommend this conditional use request today, we ask that you please forward the item to City Council with no recommendation. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant or for staff?
This is Commissioner Mobley. I have a question for applicant or staff. How long has this building been vacant?
To my knowledge, it's been vacant since Mr. Burnell has purchased it in 2015, and it was vacant for a little bit before that. Mr. Burnell simply asked around and tried to do some research of what the building was used before, and that's how he found out it was used as an extension of a church meeting location. So I don't have the exact date for that, I'm sorry.
Rachel, do you know how long the building has been vacant?
I don't.
Okay. I was curious, do you know the vacancy rate for buildings in the Lower Ninth?
I don't know offhand.
I think that's important context for this project. And I know that the neighborhood statistical area is still down 10,000 individuals from its 2000 census numbers. So I think that's something to take into account.
Thank you, Commissioner Mobley. Are there any other questions or comments?
One other question for staff, because I know we did a lot of work on that rethink, and there was a lot of neighborhood input that came back into the discussions that we had. around the property that the applicant has invoked. What is the community input to this point on this? There's an MPP. Like, staff, can you just walk me through what's been the feedback from the community to this point?
They had to go through the MPP process to submit this application, and I think maybe the applicant can speak more on that. We haven't received any comments for this application, either in support or in opposition.
That's what I saw in the application. So yeah, if the applicant could speak to that, that would be great.
Most certainly. We did do all of the notice. We mailed all of the letters. We held a virtual meeting because we couldn't canvass or hold an in-person virtual meeting because of COVID. We sent out emails. We had the website created. We had a specific email address for any comments. And then also Mr. Burnell certainly talks this up in his store and reaches out to the community in his amazing way. For any of you guys who have met Mr. Burnell, and we have not heard anything but complete support of this moving forward. I will have to say that this location, I mean, all of the lots around it are vacant. It is not in a neighborhood in which there are homes. Mr. Burnell is excited to bring some traffic to this corner, so it's not just completely dead all the time. Like, when I say there's nothing around it, there's nothing around it, and all that's really there is Mr. Burnell's store. So really, everybody's excited for it, at least that we have heard from.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Two things I'd say. One, I would love that support because I think as you say it's anecdotal unless it's manifest in some way in terms of the, and I'll go back and look at the report again because that's good to hear. I hope there's something in there that we can bring manifest in that so that's part of this. The second is I think I appreciate what Commissioner Mobley said. I think that's the other consideration we have to make. If this wasn't on a corner lot, I would be really struggling with it because I think a mid block doesn't work. So I think coming down from Galvez where it is makes a little more sense because of the commercial district as we can see that is present. The other thing I'll say is I think having nothing around it is a double-edged. Does having commercial then help or hinder? I think that's part of the conversation that we're going to have around the development of this, especially since it will be, if approved, anomalistic with the rest of the zoning on that side of that block, on the flood side of the street. That said, I appreciate your presentation and appreciate you bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mobley, to answer your question, the PRC did a study a few years back about vacant houses in this district. And it looks like in 2019, there were 568 and they've been vacant for longer than 36 months. So to activate a space on a corner, in my personal opinion, could potentially start redevelopment on the block.
Thank you, Commissioner Witry. I just pulled up your report.
Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, we'll move along to the next subdivision docket 14821.
Subdivision docket 40. Oh, I'm sorry. Not quite yet. Apologies.
No problem. Subdivision docket 14821 is a request to re-subdivide lots 11A and 13 into lots 11A1 and 13A. This proposed re-subdivision would reconfigure an L-shaped lot and a rectangular lot such that the existing rectangular lot would become L-shaped and the existing L-shaped lot would become rectangular. This subdivision is being requested to enable applicants to, for lack of a better way to put it, share the leg of the existing L-shaped lot, which is 4416 and 4418 Constance, to the existing rectangular lot at 4424 Constance. It should be noted that this petition does not represent the creation of a new L-shaped lot configuration where none currently exists. Rather, it is an adjustment to the two subject lots' property boundaries that simply reassigns the existing L segment from one lot to the other. In most cases, subdivisions that create, quote, minor L-shape, that is, those where the leg of the L-shaped lot relative to the original angular lot is 15% or less of the original lot square footage. In most cases, those are acceptable to the staff. Major L shapes, on the other hand, where the leg portion exceeds 15% are generally considered unacceptable, although exceptions can be made where there are such special circumstances that justify the lot shape. The leg of the proposed L shape in this case is approximately 33%, which is well above the 10% hold, or thus ordinarily the staff wouldn't support this. But since this L shape already exists, the staff considers it to be a special circumstance to justify the request. The proposal is consistent with the master plan, and therefore the staff recommends tentative approval of subdivision docket 14821 with final approval subject to 3 provisos.
Thank you. Is there an applicant or an applicant's representative on the call?
Hi, I'm Lauren Griffin. I represent both of the property owners. This one right now, lot A1 would become lot A, 11A would become lot 11A1, and that lot is not currently using that rear portion. So 13, which is now 13, it would be 13A, is going to use that back portion. They have a family, they just have more use out of it. It's a younger family. The L shape, as Ms. Jones already said, is already there. It's just being transferred to the other property, and it in fact makes it a little bit of a cleaner L shape. And then the other rectangular lot remains. There are at least 7 other L-shaped properties that are substantially L-shaped in the area, in the very immediate vicinity. It really would comply with everything there, and it's just shifting the L from one property to the next.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the commission for staff or the applicant? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the reconsideration of subdivision docket 4820.
Subdivision Docket 4820 is a request by Algiers Development District to subdivide a portion of the former Algiers Naval Air Station into 24 lots across 17 squares to be used as regular lots, and the creation of 23 parcels designated as R1 through R23, which correspond to the private streets that run through their subdivision. The municipal address is 2000 General Meyer Avenue. The subdivision request is submitted in order to proceed with a mix of commercial and residential development throughout the Federal City campus. An effect of the subdivision request will be to create lots that mostly match existing street servitude agreement boundaries, thereby allowing lots to be created with frontage on the street parcels. There are some lots proposed to be created on the current streets that fall outside of the boundaries of the current servitude. However, since the streets are not being formally dedicated at this point, the requested subdivision requires a waiver of the subdivision regulation requiring lots to front on a street right-of-way. Instead, the proposed lots would technically front on another lot, though the lots would operate as streets. As the subdivision proposal calls for the creation of more than 5 lots, it is classified as a major subdivision pursuant to Article 3, Section 3.1.2 of the Subdivision Regulations. It is to be reviewed as a Policy D subdivision in accordance with Article 3, Section 3.2.4 of the Subdivision Regulations. The Commission granted tentative approval to this proposal at its July 14th, 2020 meeting. Pursuant to Section 8.2.3 of the Subdivision Regulations, the applicant must secure final approval within 1 year of the tentative approval date. In this case, the applicant has not completed the requirements for final approval, so the tentative approval has expired. Thus, they are seeking that the Commission again grant tentative approval of the subdivision. The staff maintains its original recommendation of tentative approval. However, the staff recommends modifying several of the original provisos to remove those that pertain to the creation of new streets. In the case of this request, the approval is intended to allow Federal City to have private lots over the streets as opposed to public or private rights of way. And since no street construction is intended, the staff recommends removing the standard provisos that speak to street right-of-way improvements. Therefore, the staff recommends tentative approval with final approval subject to 3 waivers and 4 provisos.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the Algiers Development District on the call?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Richard Cortizes, 201 St. Charles Avenue. Again, on behalf of the applicant Algiers Development District, again, as staff pointed out, this is simply just a reconsideration of a previously approved tentative subdivision approval that unfortunately lapsed in part due to the pandemic and the relocation of the architect. Frankly, it was just not brought across the finish line. This subdivision will allow the district to plan in a more efficiently and orderly fashion as they continue to look at developing that land. So we respectfully request your support of approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions for the applicant or for staff, the commission?
And for the applicant, Commissioner Lund, just about the changes with the provisos with regard to private streets versus the public infrastructure, is that something you are amenable to?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's fine. They are private streets. There is a servitude that was granted by the federal government to the city of New Orleans to allow the streets to be used for public use, but they're not dedicated for public use. So they have to, we're going to have to maintain them under the servitude and treat them as parcels, as staff pointed out. So it's 24 lots, but an additional 23 parcels that are identified as streets. And I guess as the development progresses and there's developments and we have to dedicate those streets, we're probably going to have to meet the street requirements. The streets also the streets right now do not meet the DPW street standards. So we're fine with those provisos.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. So the subdivision ratifications.
Yeah, there's a list of subdivisions which are ready for your ratification that we as a staff may approve them administratively. And that can occur after the public comment break, actually.
Right, okay, so we'll just move on to zoning docket 10121, which I believe is set for deferral, right?
This is one item that will need to be deferred to the next item on the next meeting on December 14th.
Okay, great. So that concludes the presentation of dockets. So we'll be going on recess for 30 minutes. So we're looking for a motion for a 3 o'clock return.
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second. We'll
Thank you, Commissioner Witry.
3 p.m.
Thank you. Call the question. Commissioner Alexander?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Flick? Yes. Commissioner Lund?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Stieg?
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart?
Yes.
Commissioner Wiedberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Witry?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. We'll see you at 3 o'clock. Stephen, are we ready to go?
Yeah, we should be. I just sent out the public comment, so you should have it in your inbox.
I think we have all the commissioners nearby. I see Commissioner Alexander. There we go. Hello. Great. I'll call roll. Commissioner Alexander.
Present.
Commissioner Brown.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Flick, present. Commissioner Lunn. Commissioner Mobley.
Present.
Commissioner Stieg.
Here.
Commissioner Stewart.
Present.
Commissioner Wiedberg.
Present.
And Commissioner Witry. Okay, we do have quorum, so we can proceed with the comments. The first is zoning docket 9621.
Madam Chair, I just want to note that there seem to be some comments on the minutes that are actually for the jail. So if you approve, I will go ahead and save those for when we get to that docket.
Sure.
Okay. And the first one from 96, that also appears to have a comment for the jail by it. Two comments for the jail that are marked as 9621, but are actually for the jail. So so I don't see any comments that are relevant for 96.
Okay. Thank you. So zoning docket 9621, recommendation was for approval. This was a text amendment for the wine shop as a conditional use.
Commissioner Witry will make a motion to approve zoning docket 09621.
Thank you, Commissioner Witry. Is there a second?
Commissioner Lunn will second Commissioner Witry's motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Witry made a motion to approve zoning docket 9621, seconded by Commissioner Lunn. If there are no comments or discussion, I will call the question. Commissioner Alexander?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Flick, yes. Commissioner Lunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Commissioner Stieg?
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart?
Yes.
Commissioner Wiedberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Witry?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next is zoning docket 9721.
No public comments.
Zoning docket 9721, staff report was recommendation for denial. This was the zoning docket that we had a pretty lengthy discussion regarding subdivision and zoning and future housing study. So I'm looking for a motion.
This is Commissioner Brown. Sorry, I was delayed on my video. I am going to do something that I, always have pause before I do, which is to go against the staff's recommendation, and of course against consistency with the master plan here. But I do think this is an unusual situation, and the but for here is that we might get to this in a lengthy process to correct what I think might be policy that this commission would agree on in the future about this, and I'm going to move approval.
Thank you,
Commissioner
Brown. Oh, go ahead.
I'll second that, just because I'm also not a fan of spot zoning. However, there is a history of multifamily on the block, and there doesn't seem to be a tool in our CPC toolbox for this. So I'm going to support this motion as well.
Thank you. I have a motion from Commissioner Brown to approve Zoning docket 9721, seconded by Commissioner Witchery. Is there any discussion before we call for a vote? Okay, I'll call the question. Commissioner Alexander.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Flick. Yes. Commissioner Lunn.
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley.
Yes.
Commissioner Stieg.
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart.
Yes.
Commissioner Weidberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Witchery.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes. And hopefully we can address some of those items in our future housing study moving forward. Next item is zoning docket 9821. This was staff's recommendation was for denial. This was the, I believe this was the larger development.
We do have a public comment on this.
Thank you.
Though not 100% sure it's really for this one, but it can't be clear. From Maggie Mahoney, 1032 Bartholomew Street, in support, states, yes, the people have spoken on this issue again and again, and yes is essential to the CPC serving our city with integrity. And that's the last comment.
Okay. Okay.
That sounds like it would probably apply to the prison docket, which is the docket afterwards.
Probably.
Likely. We're looking for a motion. Or if there are any questions for staff.
This is for denial, but they've met also with the council and had an NPP process. Is that correct? And everything was favorable from those meetings. And so is this another that we don't have a tool in our toolbox?
I mean,
that's it. So sure.
It's not the same case as the previous one.
Right.
It's very different. We simply have here a master plan issue that calls for this land to be developed with office parks, light industrial uses, and does not allow single family development, essentially. It's not, you know, in the previous case, you had a parcel that used to be developed with a two-family dwelling and with a surrounding development that called for also that type of development. So that's not really the situation here in this specific instance.
Thank you.
Question for staff. This, however, is a less intense use than was previously allowed. No, or is that it's just a different impact?
Yeah, it probably is even a lesser impact than what is currently allowed by right on the site. But it would be going against the master plan designation, which is trying to save some areas in the city that are appropriate for industrial office parks because of their particular location. Here in this instance, it's at the corner of two major arterials. And so that's the only conflict as far as we're concerned that we see with this application. You have, if the property actually has been vacant, has always been vacant, according to what we have researched, and it's been zone business industrial park since 1970, and it has been vacant since then.
And if I'm
Well,
seeing
I mean,
this,
it has always been vacant, essentially.
if I'm seeing this correctly, it would still be surrounded by the industrial zoning. So you'd be carving a section of that zoning out to be single family, correct? So it would still
Correct.
be surrounded on all sides by.
Not on all sides. It would be adjacent to the remainder of the BIP.
Yes, on the road, on the road side, you're right, across the road. But
Correct.
for the side of the road it's on, everything that surrounds it is industrial.
Everything that's across the streets is single-family residential. So across Bullard Avenue
Correct.
and across Dwyer, right? Yes.
But on
Dwyer
the riverside of Bullard, it's all industrial.
It's all BIP, correct, yes.
Then Chairman, I'll make the motion to support staff recommendation for denial.
Thank you, Commissioner Friedberg. Is there a second?
Commissioner Mobley will second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? I'll call the question. Oh, no, first I'm going to repeat it. Commissioner Friedberg made a motion to go with staff recommendation of denial for zoning docket 9821, seconded by Commissioner Mobley. And if there's no discussion, I'll call the question. Commissioner Alexander?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Flick? Yes. Commissioner Lunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner Stieg? Commissioner Stewart, I see you. Can you say yes?
Okay, and I'm back. Sorry,
Thank
that was
you.
muted. Yes. I vote yes.
Commissioners, thank you. Commissioner Stewart?
Yes.
Commissioner Friedberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Witry?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next is zoning docket 9921.
Okay, I will start at the beginning with comments marked as being for the minutes. First comment being from Jonah Quinn, 625 St. Ferdinand Street. In support, when we expand jails, there is always pressure to fill them. Filling jails means tearing families apart. Families in this city are already under enough stress. Protect our families and use the money smarter. Thanks for listening. Next, from Elliot Barron, 1301 Mandeville Street, providing more information. It is a shame that the buying and selling and trading of human flesh is still our leading industry. Shouldn't we retrofit and care for those in our custody before we expand our corrections facilities? Next, from Olivia Mansing, 2702 Burgundy Street, in opposition, in favor of retrofitting and not expanding the OJC. Next, from Catherine Evelyn, 2225 North Durbany Street, providing more information. Care not cages, don't expand the jail. Next, from Amanda Emily Smith, 1228 Kerlelec Street, in opposition. Please do not expand OJC. Please retrofit OJC. Expansion does not benefit our city. Next, from Jazz Franklin, 1235 Carondelet, in opposition. Community members would not like to see the expansion of the OJC. New Orleanians with mental health diagnoses should receive proper care outside of a cage. This is a preventative measure to help reduce the number of prisoners and ensure that the community can trust the city of New Orleans when presented with people who are vulnerable or in jeopardy. Next, from Kate Selker, 2428 St. Philip Street, in support. Please retrofit and not expand this facility. We have the resources we need to make this space compliant. We do not need more opportunities to jail people who are mentally ill. Jails are not therapeutic spaces. Next, from Tillman Hardy, 6916 Camberley Drive, in support. I'm here to prevent the jail expansion, also known as Phase 3. We do not need to create more beds for our current prison. We should use alternatives to care for mentally ill citizens inside and prior incarcerated citizens outside of the prison. Next, from Megan Bronson, 8722 Willow Street, in opposition. Please do not build a new jail facility. Please retrofit the existing facilities as needed. Next, from Janet Hayes, in opposition. I respectfully ask that you oppose the conditional use permit on zoning docket 9921. Commissioners, my organization, Healing Minds NOLA, advocates for a full streamlined continuum of psychiatric treatment and care for people suffering with untreated and undertreated serious mental illnesses. Today, you are here to decide on how to accommodate for a subset of people living with serious mental illnesses who are unable to live in the community due to significant histories of violence and likely to pose public safety concerns. 50% of the people living with schizophrenia and bipolar disease lack insight that they have a serious mental illness and therefore will not voluntarily seek help. You see them every day on the streets, in jails, revolving in and out of acute care psychiatric hospital beds, in morgues. Their voices have been rendered mute by mental health laws that prevent treatment until many prove themselves dangerous to self, others, or severely gravely disabled. Yet I hear from their shattered and exhausted family members every day. Sadly, in many cases, people who meet the criteria of dangerousness only receive appropriate treatment for the first time in forensic care. Yet Phase 2 retrofit advocates are content to discard this group and their families by diverting resources to those with lesser charges suffering with similar diseases. FEMA funds are allocated specifically for this population, abandoned by the mental health industry to receive constitutional treatment and care in what is now the Orleans Justice Center. Let's be clear, psychiatry is broken, but we do not need to make it worse. The Phase 2 retrofit advocates lack experience about forensic psychiatry. Yet rather than collaborating with those who do have expertise, they simply exclude them from their planning table. Next, from John Wool, Route 39, Worcester, New York, in support. The administration and city council have put forward a sound plan to address the concerns raised in the consent decree jail's physical plan. This is critical to resolving a long-standing matter of dispute. It is equally critical that the council approve the retrofit plan so that the plan addresses those concerns moving forward. So your recommendation for approval of the retrofit plan will help ensure that the council moves this work forward. It has been mistakenly stated that Judge Afric has ordered Phase 3 to be built. This is not accurate, especially given that a federal statute, the Prison Litigation Reform Act of 1996, prohibits a district court judge from ordering the building of a jail. Judge Afric ordered that the city keep its commitment to building a facility that provides the physical plant to meet constitutional standards. A retrofit second floor of the current jail would be such a facility. Please help us move a step closer to completing the retrofit of the New Orleans jail. Next, from Susan Guidry, 7320 Jade Street, in support. We need to focus on strong leadership, proper management, and adequate staffing rather than on pouring tens of millions into still more buildings. People, not buildings, provide care. Lack of staffing is the main problem. The sheriff just stated at OPSO's budget meeting before the council that they are currently short 100 staff. This shortage has existed for 8 years since the opening of the present jail. There will be no additional staffing needs with the retrofit, as it will be within the existing jail. By contrast, Phase 3 will require 100 more staff above and beyond the present needs, including security, medical, maintenance, and operational staff. The critical shortage of staffing for an entirely new building will worsen treatment of the acutely mentally ill, not improve it. Next, from Vern Baxter, 932 Wilson Drive, in support. I support the proposal contained in zoning docket 9921 to abandon construction of a new Phase 3 jail in favor of a retrofit of the second floor of the Orleans Justice Center to humanely and constitutionally treat detained people with mental disabilities. 2 points about financial issues that favor the retrofit proposal. First, the Phase 3 jail will not be completed before the FEMA imposed deadline of August 29, 2023 to use replacement funds allocated after Hurricane Katrina. Since Phase 3 will not be substantially complete by then, taxpayers would have to pay for the entire $65 million price tag for the new jail. Proposed retrofit will be completed well before the deadline and thus will be completely covered by those FEMA funds. Second, the much lower cost of retrofit will allow use of remaining FEMA funds, roughly $26 million, for renovating an existing facility such as the VA hospital to care for the seriously mentally ill residents in the community rather than in jail. This supports the widely accepted proposition that a better use of space and resources is to treat those with mental disabilities in the community rather than in a jail. Next, from Bob Murrell, 6334 Canal Boulevard, in support. I support the retrofit option. Your approval is one more step towards convincing a single judge that jail expansion is not necessary to provide constitutional protections for people incarcerated in New Orleans. Thank you. Next, from Emily Mikesel, 3328 North Olympia Street, in support. I would like to show my support for retrofitting, not expanding the OJC. Next, from Natalie Sharp, 500 South Hennessy Street, representing New Orleans Voices for Accountability and Safety, in support. My name is Natalie Sharp, and I'm writing on behalf of the New Orleans Voices for Accountability and Safety in support of Agenda Item 921. The Phase 3 expansion is costly and unnecessary endeavor that would put more New Orleanians in harm's way, whose needs would be better served in the community. Medical professionals, community advocates, and city government officials agree that the alternative retrofit plan is a better option for providing constitutional care for those incarcerated at OJC, and that it would save the city millions of dollars. Today, we ask you that you consider both the financial and human costs of building this dangerous psychiatric jail and instead support the retrofit option. Next, from Bruce Riley, representing our 4930 Washington Avenue, representing Voices of the Experienced. In support. Considering that you did not even acknowledge my comment last month, please read my email yesterday to each of you regarding violation of the public meetings law. This YouTube feed is not a public meeting and this body is losing credibility. Regarding jail construction projects, it is embarrassing to find this board would allow an entity like OPSO run by a single official to control the contracts. According to the latest OPSO audit 2019, which was conducted by the sheriff's own campaign treasurer, Postlethwaite and Netterville, OPSO has no written policies for contracts, nor debt service, nor how to add vendors to the list. Furthermore, OPSO's chief purchasing officer, John Sens, has gone to jail for kickbacks. Two senior staff, Gerald Urson and Roy Austin, have gone to jail for running double dipping schemes of being paid to work the jail while also being paid to work an extra security detail. The same likely occurred with filming jailbirds. The sheriff was cited by the legislative auditor for improperly billing the state for millions in supplemental pay that they are ineligible to receive. The auditor also cited them for not keeping maintenance records on vehicles where there are millions of taxpayer dollars spent on repairs to DNS steering, a campaign donor. OPSO is not subject to the city ethics board nor to any oversight of the inspector general. They have no finance board and also do not post their contracts on any public website. How can you, in good conscience, possibly authorize OPSO to move ahead with any sort of slush funding construction activities? His own contractors, Grace Abear Architects, had to sue for cost overruns being pushed upon them. The approver of overruns, Mike Gaffney, is still under contract. Both of them, like all OPSO contractors, donate to the sheriff's campaign. Some, like Bobby Major and Alan Ursey, are his friends and have extracted millions of public dollars into their pockets while working for his election campaign, donating and receiving massive unmonitored contracts. Next, from Helena Silver-Noninen, in support. Have any of you donated to the campaign and or received anything of value from anyone? From any. My name is Henna Silvoninen, and I am a resident of District B. I am in support of a proposal to renovate the existing jail building instead of building a new Phase 3 jail facility. A new facility would increase incarceration in New Orleans, and we do not need that. The retrofit option would be cheaper, saving millions of dollars that could go towards preventative care in the community. Thank you for your consideration. Next, from Press Kabakoff, 812 Gravier Street, Suite 200, in support. Retrofit is a common sense approach to addressing the alleged deficiencies in the physical plant of the jail with regards to the care of the 50 seriously mentally ill persons detained there. It is far less expensive, far quicker, and in many ways better than the Phase 3 proposal for a new mental health jail. Retrofit, compared to Phase 3, will save the city and taxpayers up to $50 million in construction costs after factoring in the industry-wide increase in construction costs of 30%. And because the retrofit approach does not require any additional staffing, it will save $10 million each year on operating costs compared to Phase 3. And retrofit can be completed in under a year, at least 2 years quicker than building an entire new jail. This is particularly relevant because FEMA's $38 million must be utilized by 2023 and Phase 3. Best case won't be completed until 2024. As the staff report notes, retrofit is more attuned to the needs of the seriously mentally ill inmates by providing, for example, more single cells than would Phase 3. Please recommend approval of the city's retrofit approach to addressing these issues.
Hey, Paul, this is Steven. I need to interrupt. Part of a previous comment got cut off due to formatting, so I'll just read the remainder of that comment into the record. This is the rest of Bruce Riley's comment, which was a couple comments ago. After what Paul already read, it continues, how can you actually, have any of you donated to the campaign and or received anything of value from his donors or vendors? Have you received, I'm sorry, I'm trying to, have you received, one second, please. Just having a formatting issue. Okay, here we go. Have you received a discounted property at auction from OPSO? Are any of your family members profiting from the $1 billion of taxpayer funds the sheriff has spent on a jail that is still out of compliance with constitutional standards? If the answer is yes, please recuse yourself immediately. His auditor/treasurer recently reported a donation to an entity that does not exist, but is a few typos away from being $3,000 given to Eddie Oliver, a member of William Jefferson and Renee Gilpratt's corruption ring. You may or may not have an investigative arm, but the sheriff appears to be running a criminal enterprise, and any permissions you allow of him are furthering that racketeering behavior. The city needs to attach some strings before allowing this independent agency, OPSO, to conduct business in this city. This body's approval of a huge construction project has resulted in a series of scandals. Your permissions and approvals makes you complicit. Respectfully, Bruce Riley, JD. And that concludes Mr. Riley's comment.
All right, and next comment is from Anna Sachs, 2631 St. Anne Street. In support, good afternoon, my name is Anna Sachs, and I am a resident of Mid-City, Treme. I support the renovation of the current jail facility instead of expanding the jail with the Phase 3 psychiatric facility, because it is the safer, more compassionate, humane, and fiscally responsible thing to do. We cannot afford to build another jail, both financially and for the well-being of New Orleanians. Thank you for your time and consideration. Next, from Stephen Skoog, 2931 Robert Street. In support. Hello, my name is Steve Skoog, and I'm a resident of Broadmoor, and I firmly support the renovation of the current jail facility instead of expanding the jail with the Phase 3 psychiatric facility, because building new facilities encourages law enforcement to fill it up, and the current facilities can be retrofitted at a lower price tag to accommodate the new psychiatric facility. The expansion will be a misuse of valuable funds that should be redirected to programs that systematically reduce crime and poverty. Thank you for your consideration. Next, from Kylie Shortell, 3028 Senn Street, in opposition. Do not expand the jails, retrofit the jails. It is more economical with our tax money and better for the inmates. We don't need this expensive and unnecessary expansion. Do not do it. Next, from Elaine Leda, 1620 Dublin. In support. I support the renovation of the present facility and oppose the building of new one, Phase 3. Mentally ill are over-incarcerated, and the retrofit plan offers better continuum of care options. Gusman has mismanaged previous construction. Prisons have huge impacts on all residents, not only on incarcerated individuals. Next, from Lexi Peterson Burge, 3700 Orleans Avenue, in support. The Orleans Justice Center has been under a federal consent decree for many years that the sheriff has not been able to come into compliance with. The consent decree outlines the basic constitutional needs that the jail needs to provide for those being detained in OJC. With the retrofit of Phase 2, experts have testified that we would be able to come into compliance with the consent decree, provide constitutional care, and do so within 1 year without jail expansion, effectively helping many New Orleanians and saving millions of tax FEMA dollars. We must retrofit and not expand the jail. We need care, not cages. Next, from Angela Quinn, 2508 Alethea Street. In support. We must take this opportunity to prevent further jail expansion and do better for those incarcerated. The mentally ill population needs care, not cages. Next, from Pam Nath, 1744 North Rocheblave. In support. Phase 2 of the jail should be modified to meet the required needs rather than Phase 3 being built. This is a better use of resources as well as supportive of residents' clearly expressed desire to move away from mass incarceration. Next, from Telly Hankton, 3400 Claiborne Avenue, providing more information. I'm inspired by Miss Hudson's efforts to let us all out of prison and hope you will help her however you can. Next, from Sarah Dumas, 124 South Telemaca Street, in support. We must invest in our city's infrastructure and allocate the proper funding to support healthcare, education, housing, and community wellness. Purpose 1A in the CZO looks to encourage and promote, in accordance with present and future needs, the public health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of New Orleans. That's why you must support this proposal. Next, experts testify that there is sufficient space to modify the various pods and tiers to safely and constitutionally house detained people with severe mental illnesses. Renovating the existing facility would allow the city to create and implement desperately needed community-based mental health care in the community. Please do the right thing for our community. Next, from Claire Singer, 3948 Louisiana Avenue Parkway, in support. Bring the jail into constitutional compliance without building a new jail. We know that when there are more beds, they will be filled, and that means we will just be losing more people to jail in a system that does not help or protect. We need supportive resources, not expanded jails. Next, from Vanessa Spinozola, Justice and Accountability Center of Louisiana, in support. The Justice and Accountability Center of Louisiana helps people recover from contact with the criminal legal system. We support the retrofit of the jail and spending of city resources on meaningful services for people who struggle with mental health, not expensive buildings that do little to increase public safety. As members of the Louisiana Stop Solitary Coalition, we know that the default is for jails to isolate people with mental illness instead of providing them with services. Solitary causes sometimes irreparable harm. Please ensure that our jail is not only constitutional, but actually serving the people of New Orleans by prioritizing funds for this retrofit and the sorely needed mental health services. Next, from Sadie Dumas, 124 South Telemachus, in support. I write as someone who cares about jail conditions for people locked up and wants to see New Orleans not use jail and the ultimate housing solution for people with mental illnesses. I urge the City Planning Commission to support this proposal to retrofit the current jail to provide the brick and mortar needed for constitutional conditions. The number of people we incarcerate has been normalized even before COVID. It's projected to decline somewhat further. There are currently more than 500 empty beds in the current jail, even if the people now in TDC were returned there. This allows ample room to perform the retrofit. Many pods are less than half full and one or more are entirely empty. Please vote in support of this proposal. Next, from Jenna Grant, 3011 Bell Street, in opposition. The city should be retrofitting the existing jail to provide constitutionally mandated care to people with severe mental health illnesses. Give a signal to New Orleanians that we are interested in their care, not in punishing them for their illnesses. Next, from Abby Sussman, 3013 Bowden Street, in support. Hello, my name is Abby Sussman and I'm a resident of Mid-City. I'm also a social work student who works with currently incarcerated and formerly incarcerated clients. I firmly support the renovation of the current jail facility instead of expanding the jail with the phase 3 psychiatric facility because people with mental illness in our country are over-criminalized, particularly in New Orleans. The city is in dire need of community-based mental health services outside of the jail system to serve and care for New Orleanians who find themselves at the intersection of mental illness and the criminal legal system. New Orleanians deserve mental health care outside of the carceral systems. Thank you for your consideration. Next, from Daniel Ostreicher, 2012 St. Louis Street, in opposition. Retrofit, do not expand the OJC. Furthering incarceration of the mentally ill is short-sighted and counterproductive. Next, from Zoe Johnson, 1506 Sauvage Street, in support. Please, people who have serious mental health needs do not belong in jail, and any system that intends to put them there is doing more harm than good. The city should retrofit the existing jail to meet mandated requirements and then focus on creating a non-punitive space where people with mental health needs can get care. Next, from Glenn D. Hartman, 337 Lower Line Street, in support. Doing the retrofit will cost less and take less time than building phase 3. Save our tax dollars for other priorities. Support retrofit. Next from Alicia Majot, 607 North Salcedo Street. Would like to provide more information. I urge the commission to retrofit the OJC and not expand. We do not need more jails. We need resources that work for our community. Next from Darlene Jones, 2008 St. Philip Street, in opposition. I would like to urge the CPC to rule against the expansion of the OJC in favor of retrofitting the existing premises to serve our mentally challenged population. We need better, more precise, and tailored care and not a bigger building. Thank you for your true and honest consideration of the benefits of retrofitting all involved and or affected by mental health. Next from Grace Ostendorf, 5517 Ferret Street, in support. Hello, my name is Grace Ostendorf, and I am a resident of Ferret neighborhood. I firmly support the renovation of the current jail facility instead of expanding the jail with the phase 3 psychiatric facility because New Orleans has come so far by reducing jail populations since the early 2000s. And we do not want to go backwards by building another jail facility under the guise of mental health, which is already over-criminalized, especially in New Orleans. We as a city need to do better in providing care for those with severe mental illnesses, and jail is not care. Thank you for your consideration. Next from Daniel Tipton, 135 North Carrollton Street, Apartment C, in support. Retrofitting the current prison is the best option here. It will save the city a lot of money, and ideally we can use that money saved to invest in communities so there is less need for prisons in the future. Next from Leslie Molson, 1931 Laurel Street, in support. My name is Leslie Molson. I am a resident of District B. I firmly support the renovation of the current jail facility instead of expanding the jail with a phase 3 psychiatric facility. I've been on a tour of the new jail and there is so much wasted space. It makes sense to renovate the second floor for housing this special population. The sheriff had this opportunity to build a new jail, and it makes no sense economically or morally to do anything but retrofit the current facility. From a human rights standpoint, people with acute mental illness should not be put in jail at all. Mental illness is not a crime. Let's use the money to support our community members who are struggling with their mental and emotional health instead of punishing them by locking them up pre-trial. The city has historically been reluctant or unable to curb the sheriff's endless bids for more power and more prisoners, like keeping the TDC open legally. But in July 2021, the New Orleans City Council unanimously passed a resolution instructing the City Planning Commission to study the retrofit option. Now it's up to you. Your recommendations can send the message that we want oversight and accountability and that a retrofit is the only right thing to do. Thank you for your consideration. Next from Michael Casper, 2824 Daniel Street, in opposition. I oppose the phase 3 psychiatric jail expansion because it is an unnecessary expense. The jail can be retrofitted to comply with the consent decree in a shorter period of time than the 3 years needed to build the phase 3 facility for a far lesser cost. Next from Michael DeLashman, 1937 Esplanade Avenue, Apartment B, in support. My name is Mike and I'm a resident of Treme Mid-City. I firmly support the renovation of the current jail facility instead of expanding the jail with the phase 3 psychiatric facility because people with severe mental illness are over-criminalized throughout the country, particularly in New Orleans. The city is in dire need of community-based mental health services outside of the jail system to serve and care for New Orleanians who find themselves at the intersection of mental illness and the criminal legal system. The National Alliance on Mental Illness says once in jail, many individuals with mental illness don't receive the treatment they need, end up getting worse, not better. They stay longer than their counterparts without mental illness. They are at risk of victimization, and often their mental health conditions get worse. Criminalizing mental illness fills jails with people in need of care rather than imprisonment. People in need of help are dehumanized and too often cycled through the criminal legal system as opposed to being provided adequate care. The alternative plan to retrofit the existing building offers the opportunity for a continuum of care outside of the carceral system, which could be built with dollars saved by not constructing phase 3. Thank you for your consideration. Next from Maxwell Jordulo, 3702 St. Claude Avenue, in support. Please support the retrofit of the jail so that we don't have to build more unneeded beds that will only result in the continued criminalization of people with mental illness. Next, from Stanford M. Rosenthal, 1233 Spain Street, in support. The community has expressed clearly and loudly that we want to provide resources to our neighbors experiencing mental health crises. Throughout various community meetings I've attended or watched, I have not heard one person say they want to put more of our community members in cages. I support the retrofit option as a route to comply with the federal court order while saving resources that could better be used to provide our community with care it desperately needs and fundamentally deserves. Next, from John DeLeo, 1219 Pine Street, in support. Hello, my name is John DeLeo. I am writing in strong opposition to the expansion of the Phase 3 jail. We need to retrofit the existing jail and not waste precious resources, precious city money on a new facility that would not help the city but possibly harm vulnerable populations. Please follow the medical and mental health experts who oppose this expensive, wasteful endeavor. I support retrofitting the existing jail instead. Next, from Amelia Carnes, 3334 Louisiana Avenue, in support. Hello, my name is Amelia and I'm a resident of Broadmoor. I firmly support the renovation of the current jail facility instead of expanding the jail with the Phase 3 psychiatric facility because it is important to invest in mental health infrastructure for the safety and dignity of New Orleans residents instead of expanding the capacity to incarcerate our residents. Phase 3 would be an unnecessary waste of city dollars that would add no benefit to the community. Instead, please consider the following medical and mental health experts' advice and retrofitting the existing facility with research-backed approaches to care, not punitive ones. Thank you for your consideration. Next, from Megan Thiel Mack, 6024 Whitfield Drive, in opposition. I am strongly requesting that the expansion of the jail does not occur. The city of New Orleans needs more outpatient mental health services and not a psychiatric jail. We need more preventative services in the city. Thank you. Next, from Megan Flatley, 248 Cherokee Street, in opposition. Please do not expand the OJC. Next, from Stephen Pasternak, 1571 North Dorgenois, representing Living School, in support. Hello, my name is Stephan Pasternak, school director at Living School and a resident of the 7th Ward in Runna High School in New Orleans East. I firmly support the renovation of the current jail facility instead of expanding the jail with the Phase 3 psychiatric facility because it's a more effective way to use the infrastructure we have to provide care for our fellow citizens and focus more on the city's funds on the care instead of the facility. Let's invest in all people's well-being. Thank you for your consideration. Next, from Rory Payne, 2249 Brainerd Street, in opposition. Do not expand OJC. Our neighbors with mental health diagnoses should not receive this type of care in an expanded facility. The CPC should recommend a retrofit instead of an expansion. Stop the expansion. Next, from Andrew Lehman, 8722 Willow Street, in opposition. I do not think that the size of the OJC should grow. I'd rather see the money spent to retrofit the facility to provide better care. Next, from Annie Bachrak, 922 North Johnson Street, in support. I oppose any new construction that could lead to increased incarceration in New Orleans and believe the city should instead invest in research-backed approaches to mental health care outside of the carceral system. This jail's population is at an all-time low, and there is more than enough space to renovate the facility to comply with consent decree measures of constitutional care. Expanding the jail now is costly, unnecessary, and a threat to some of our most vulnerable community members. We must invest in our city's non-carceral infrastructure and allocate the proper funding to support education, housing, and community wellness. Cities across the country are changing how they treat mental illness as a matter of access to healthcare, not a crime problem. New Orleans should too. Next, from Philip Stelly, 2800 Perdido Street, representing the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office, in opposition. The city's own proposed retrofit does not include an infirmary, which even the city's own expert agrees is not compliant with the consent judgment. OJC requires an infirmary. Next, from Undernika Morris, 4640 South Carrollton Avenue, in support. I firmly support the renovation of the current jail facility instead of expanding the jail with the Phase 3 psychiatric facility. Prisons impact community health and public safety outside of jail walls, including District B. As an affordable housing advocate, we need to consider the ramifications of how it will impact the quality of life for everyone both inside and outside of the carceral system. Work smarter, not harder, and put housing first by approving zoning docket 9921. Next, from Lucy Bloomberg, 3626 Dumaine Street, in opposition. Retrofit, don't expand. Next, from Megan Peak, 57 Thrasher Street, New Orleans, in support. Hello, my name is Megan Peak, and I live in the Lakeview area of New Orleans. I firmly support the renovation of the current jail facility instead of expanding the jail with the Phase 3 psychiatric facility, because the Phase 3 psychiatric jail is costly and unnecessary. This new jail facility will lead to greater incarceration and drain the city's already depleted resources. The city should invest this money in further improving resources for our most vulnerable residents, such as education, housing, and community wellness, which has proven effective at decreasing crime and the number of people incarcerated in other cities across the country. Next, appears to be the last comment.
Thank you. And just to reiterate for the public, this docket is to allow for the city to pursue the retrofit option. This vote is not deciding between Phase 3 construction versus retrofit. We're merely, or we are voting on to rewrite or change the ordinance to allow us to pursue that retrofit option. So with that, this zoning docket 9921 staff report has for approval with 1 waiver and 21 provisos. Looking if there are any questions or a motion.
Commissioner Flick, before we proceed to that, would I be able to exercise the, I think, 2-minute rebuttal period as the representative of the applicant?
Missy, would you go? Was there anyone in opposition of docket?
There was some styled as opposition. I think there might have been one, so he can go ahead.
If not, I, as commissioner, would love to hear 2 minutes of what Will Snowden has to say on the subject.
Go ahead, Mr. Snowden.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to revisit the city's master plan, and thinking about how that document is really the guiding force of how the city can grow over the next 20 years, we have to take in consideration the financial costs of Phase 3. What we know is that it would cost $51 million to construct Phase 3. It would take $8 million a year to run. So that would mean about $189 million over the next 30 years at a 4% discount rate that would be spent on this particular jail by the city of New Orleans, when FEMA is only providing $36 million for a facility that would promote the public safety, a building that would promote public safety. So from a growth perspective, the 30-year projection of what this Phase 3 proposal would cost is going to inhibit the growth of New Orleans. From the renovation perspective, we would not have an increased annual operating cost. It would be about $10 million that would need to be spent to renovate the 3 pods articulated in the plan on the 2nd floor. But when we compare the $10 million cost for construction to the $51 million of construction of Phase 3, and we think about what will be more conducive to grow in the city of New Orleans, the renovation meets that particular point. As was articulated in the staff report, from a land use perspective, renovating the Phase 2 or the current jail works as a land use perspective. And although I recognize the City Planning Commission's role is narrowly focused on assessing a proposed renovation's impact in terms of type of traffic that would be generated and other activities, what is being proposed is something that is already within the jail. So it's an internal renovation that would not have those additional considerations that need to be taken into account as it relates to how it impacts the neighborhood. And then thirdly, from the perspective of New Orleanians, there were a number of comments. The majority of the comments have represented their desires in this instance on this conversation. There's overwhelming support to renovate the current jail for a variety of reasons. Some of the reasons that were lifted up from what I heard was this idea of discontinuing the criminalization of mental illness and the concern of if a Phase 3 facility is built, and that becomes a default area in which people with experiencing mental illnesses will receive care, as opposed to utilizing savings that would be realized from a renovation plan that could be invested into the community to create a continuum of care that does not require people to commit harm in order to receive care. And so those are the things that I wanted to lift up, those three things that from a financial perspective, consistent with the master plan, this allows the city of New Orleans to grow. From a land use perspective with the staff report, this is something that works. And from a community perspective, renovating the current jail in order to invest the continuum of care and proper services in the community is something that has been articulated by New Orleanians. And for those reasons, I would ask that you adopt the recommendation of the staff and approve this proposal.
Thank you.
I have a quick question for the applicant representative. Just to make sure that I understand, you are saying that the remaining funds from the FEMA allocation that expire in 2023, that would be left over after a retrofit of phase 2 would be able to be used for other ways to serve mentally ill patients that are not requiring incarceration?
My understanding is that those FEMA dollars are specifically allocated to creating a facility that promotes public safety. And I think that it is open to interpretation. Although that might mean a jail, it also might mean a fire station, it might mean a police station, it might mean a community health center. And so with that language of creating a facility or constructing a building that promotes public safety, my interpretation and things that I've been advised of allows for those uses to take place.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I had another question for the applicant. What is the position of the Sheriff's Department on this proposal, on the phase 2?
The sheriff has advanced their proposal of building phase 3. And so from the sheriff's perspective, they are opposing a renovation plan.
So they're not neutral on this one. They're against this one because but it's solely because they're on the phase 3.
Right. So my understanding is that they oppose the renovation plan. Their proposal of becoming compliant with the federal consent decree is building the phase 3 facility.
Thank you. And thank you for your work, Will.
So I have a question for staff or the chair. I think the chair said, I just want to confirm. So a vote in favor. So first, let me ask, the staff recommendation was for approval with provisos. Am I right?
Yes. So the staff's recommendation is approval with 1 waiver and 21 provisos. All of those, that waiver and all those provisos currently exist. So this would just simply be amending the existing provisos in the conditional use ordinance. So.
Right. And then second, this is not making a decision between the two alternatives. This is just allowing this alternative to go forward as well?
That's correct. Right? So the city council will have to make that decision. Correct.
Okay. Then I move approval subject to the waivers and provisos in the staff report.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Stieg made a motion for approval of zoning docket 9921, seconded by Commissioner Brown. Is there any discussion? If not, I will call the question. Commissioner Alexander?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Flick? Yes. Commissioner Lunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Commissioner Stieg?
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart?
Yes.
Commissioner Weidberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Wittry?
Yes.
Great, motion passes. Next is zoning docket 121.
We have 5 comments. First is from Burnell Cotlin in support of the application. Good afternoon. My name is Burnell Cotlin, and I'm the owner of hopefully the first internet cafe within my community. I'm a veteran and lifetime resident of the Lower Ninth Ward. As you all know, the Lower Ninth Ward was one of the hardest hit areas during Hurricane Katrina. Unfortunately, my community never fully recovered. Back in 2009, I utilized my entire life savings and opened up the first and still today, the only grocery store in my area. Please allow me to share a quick story. I always walk the perimeter of my store after closing. It was about 9 p.m. I discovered a little girl behind my store on her computer tablet. Keisha and I immediately told the girl to come in the store for obvious safety reasons. In about 30 minutes, she said she was finally finished with her work. I asked why she was behind my store at that time of night. Her answer broke my heart. She said that her mother had to cut off her internet at home because she didn't have no more money. I have free Wi-Fi at my store. I started paying attention and I noticed there were other people who were behind my store on the internet. Some were filling out applications, others playing video games. So I decided to do something about this problem. I purchased the building directly behind my store with the intention of opening up a much needed internet cafe. My community is in dire need of this and many other essential businesses. Please, I beg you to allow me to continue to serve my community and allow us to open up. If you have any questions of me, please feel free to contact me. Thank you for allowing me to take up so much of your valuable time. Next from Anthony Jordan, 5956 North Galvez, in support. Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Jordan. I would love to have the internet cafe in my neighborhood because it would not only benefit my kids, but other kids as well. It would give them somewhere safe to go do homework and be around positive people. Thanks in advance. Next from Chris Lennox, 2434 Winthrop. Dear sir or ma'am, I am a longtime resident of the Lower Ninth Ward. My family and friends support the council on improvement to our neighborhoods. I would love for you to all vote yes on Burnell's Internet Cafe. Thank you. God bless. Next from Anya Conlon, 1612 Charlton Drive, in support. As a New Orleans resident who has worked for 3+ years helping rebuild in the Lower Ninth Ward, I am fully in support of this project and the positive impact it will have on the community, providing access for kids to use a safe space to do their work. Next from Robert Gayette, 116 North Murat, in support. I believe that the purpose of the Internet Cafe at Burnell's is to give neighborhood kids a place to be able to do homework. NOLA.gov claims that as many as 33% of households in the city do not have internet access. This represents a huge barrier for those households, not only for education, but for economic opportunity, for connecting with family, etc. Any project that can help diminish barriers like that should be supported. That's the last comment.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments or a motion?
Commissioner Lon, so while I appreciate staff's recommendation based on that the neighborhood commercial establishment is intended to have commercial physical characteristics that this building does not have. I think the much greater public benefit here overrides that and has significant community benefit for an underserved neighborhood. And I just feel compelled to move for approval of this application.
Thank you, Commissioner Lon. Is there a second?
Commissioner Mobley will second.
Thank you, Commissioner Mobley. Is there any other discussion?
I'm going to be in support of the motion in the second. If you take a look at the corridor the CAFN supports, it is obviously not the arterial. It has been recognized, as we saw in the report, with the business district on CAFN. The Bayou Bienvenu platform on the one side, the Sanchez on the other. I think there is an argument here, and it is a corner lot. I said earlier, if it was mid-block, I would really struggle with this. I think the also stewardship of the existing business has me more comfortable with this, and the community support and lack of opposition is what finally brings me there. I think there is a planning argument to be made. I think that the investment by this business owner and their hard work in making this a living entity and expanding an existing business to better serve the community is what makes this reasonable. So I thank you for the presentation, the application, the proposal, and I wish you nothing but the best success in a neighborhood that I spend time in and hope you continue to find expanded success.
Thank you,
I just want to apologies. I just want to interject really quickly and note that there are 6 provisos in the report. And if the commission is amenable to including those in their recommendation for approval. One of those provisos is if the permeable open space standard is found to not meet the 9 criteria, there's a proviso stating that they have to remove some of the concrete to make it come into compliance. However, if the commission finds that the 9 criteria are met, then that proviso shouldn't be included. And so then it would be subject to 5 provisos.
Is the applicant's representative still available?
She is.
Yes, I am available. I'm here.
Okay, so meeting the proviso that could potentially require removal of some of the impermeable surface. Is that something that, do you know if the applicant would be unable to do? Because I hate to give up that proviso.
Mr. Burnell, the concrete space right now is kind of like an art installation. There are like little drums that you can drum on and stuff. However, Mr. Burnell is fully aware that that is a proviso, and he's fully aware that that concrete may have to come up. It's not something he's excited to do, of course, but it's something that he understands and that it can be done in order for this internet cafe to come to fruition. So yes, he knows that that needs to be done, possibly depending on what happens here, but he's aware of it.
Okay, thank you. That's right. He did say that. All right, thank you for explaining that. So I'd like to modify my motion. I move for approval of the application zoning docket 100-21, subject to 6 provisos as listed in the staff report.
Commissioner Mobley, I have a question. How many of the lots on that city block are occupied by other properties or concrete slabs?
When I look out from the lot that is in question, the only building that I see is Mr. Burnell's corner store. The rest is grass and open lots, and there's nothing there.
When I look at an overhead view on Google Maps, that is true not only of that square block, but of the 6 square blocks around it. I think the question of flood mitigation, water mitigation, and permeability on that site is perhaps appropriately addressed by the surrounding lots rather than through the removal of an art installation on that lot.
Well, no need to belabor this from my view. Good point. I'm willing to modify my motion once again in light of consideration of that, of course. I'm very, very focused on how important it is for us to always think about stormwater management in every development. But yeah, I was looking at the small V, and it's going to be, I don't anticipate that we'll be looking at much increased impervious coverage in that area anytime soon. So I'd like to modify my motion that for approval of this application zoning docket 100-21, subject to 5 provisos with removal of the proviso for meeting the stormwater management pervious pavement.
And Commissioner Lunn, you would insert a corresponding waiver finding that the 9 criteria are met for the reasons you and Commissioner Mobley mentioned. Is that accurate?
Yes, thank you.
And Commissioner Mobley, you're fine with that? You'll maintain your second?
I will.
Thank you. I don't know if I'll be able to repeat all of that, but I will try. Commissioner Lunn made a motion for approval of zoning docket 100-21, subject to 5 provisos and a waiver that will not require the lot coverage percentage. Is that good, you think? And that was seconded by Commissioner Mobley. Is there any discussion?
I like the point that the commissioners put on it. I think this is one of those instances where this developer is going first. I think that would not be the same waiver we would give for future development because you would be infringing on the permeability that we're now counting on. So I would not want this to be used as a precedent. And I think both of my fellow commissioners did a good job of articulating why that would be the case.
Thank you, Commissioner Weidberg. I will call the question. Commissioner Alexander,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes, and good luck to Mr. Burnell.
Commissioner Flick, yes. Commissioner Lunn,
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley,
Yes.
Commissioner Steed,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
Commissioner Wittry.
Yes.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Burnell. Next is subdivision docket 14821. Is there any comment?
There's no public.
No, thank you. Staff report indicates tentative approval subject to 3 provisos.
Yes.
Commissioner Wittry will move zoning docket not zoning docket, subdivision docket 14821, tentative approval with 3 provisos.
For a second. Thank you. Commissioner Wittry made a motion for approval of subdivision docket 14821, seconded by Commissioner Brown. If there's no discussion, I'll call the question. Commissioner
Can I ask
Alexander.
one question of
Oh,
the applicant?
sure.
And I apologize, I was getting it up. Is there an existing structure on this L that's being transmitted?
No.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, Commissioner Alexander,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Flick, yes. Commissioner Lunn,
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley,
Yes.
Commissioner Steed,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
Commissioner Weidberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Wittry.
Yes.
Excellent, motion passes. Next is the reconsideration of subdivision docket 4820. I don't believe there are
No.
any comments.
No public comments.
Thank you. And this was set for tentative approval with 3 waivers and 4 provisos. I believe this was just the extension of a tentative approval.
Commissioner Brown moves approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. Sieg, second.
Sieg, thank you. Commissioner Brown made a motion for approval of the reconsideration of subdivision docket 4820, seconded by Commissioner Steed. If there's no discussion, I'll call the question. Commissioner Alexander,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Flick, yes. Commissioner Lunn,
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley,
Yes.
Commissioner Steeg,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
Commissioner Weidberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Wittry.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next is the subdivision ratifications. Looking for a motion.
Commissioner Lunn, I move for ratification of subdivisions as recommended by staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Commissioner Brown?
Commissioner Brown, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lunn made a motion for the approval of the subdivision ratifications as identified by staff, seconded by Commissioner Brown. If there's no comments, I'll call the question. Commissioner Alexander,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Flick, yes. Commissioner Lunn,
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley,
Yes.
Commissioner Steeg,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
Commissioner Weidberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Wittry.
Yes.
Great, motion passes. And then the last is the deferral of zoning docket 10121 to the December 14th meeting.
No public comments.
I move to defer it to December 14th.
Second it, Commissioner Lunn.
Commissioner Wittry made a motion for approval of zoning docket 10121 to be deferred to the December 14th, seconded by Commissioner Lunn. I will call the question. Commissioner Alexander,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Flick, yes. Commissioner Lunn,
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley,
Yes.
Commissioner Sieg,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
Commissioner Weidberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Wittry.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. That concludes our business for the day.
Madam Chair, I would like to say something. I'd like to congratulate Larry because it was announced today that he was selected for the New Orleans Regional Leadership Institute for the cohort of 2022. And I'm just really proud that you went through the process, and I wish you the best of luck over the next 18 months. And we can't wait to see what you bring back to us.
Congratulations.
So congratulations.
Congrats, Larry.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks,
Congratulations, Larry. Well
and
done.
thanks Commissioner
Well done.
Wittry, for letting me know about this. I had never heard of it before, so I'm very excited.
Excellent.
As an alum, I wouldn't be doing my job if we told you wouldn't be part of the best class, but we hope your class is good nonetheless.
What cohort were you, Commissioner Weidberg?
It wasn't that long ago. I'm very
Okay.
One.
Oh, yes, it was.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Jonathan, for that dose of reality. I appreciate it.
With that, I guess a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Commissioner Lunn.
Second.
Thank you. And we'll just wave for the hands. Thanks, guys.
Good.
Yelling